She had worked for him for a few years, doing her best to keep the house running smoothly and to handle every little thing he needed. The mansion was huge, filled with expensive furniture, shining floors, and endless rooms that seemed to have no end. She had grown used to the rhythm of the house, knowing what needed attention before anyone even asked. She was quiet, diligent, and careful not to draw too much attention to herself. It was a life of routine and discipline, but she had grown used to it. Even though she often felt lonely and invisible in such a grand home, he was the kind of man who commanded attention when he entered a room. He was wealthy, successful, and known for his sharp mind and strong personality. People often admired him from a distance, but few knew the man behind the public image. In the house, he was strict and demanding. Mistakes were not tolerated, and the staff knew to be precise in every action. But beneath that strict exterior, there were moments where he seemed almost human. Moments where he let small smiles appear when something amused him or when a rare sense of humor slipped through. Their interactions were always professional at first. She kept her head down, followed instructions, and made sure that everything in the house ran smoothly. He noticed her attention to detail and began to trust her more with responsibilities that others had struggled with. It started with simple tasks, then moved to more personal matters, helping organize events, arranging important documents, and sometimes even assisting him with matters he didn't like to handle himself. Over time, the distance between them began to blur slightly. He would ask about her well-being in passing, and she began to notice small gestures of consideration. A cup of tea placed in the office just right, a word of thanks when others were too distracted to notice her work. Little by little, she began to feel a connection, a human warmth that made the work feel less like a burden. She admired his sharp mind and the way he carried himself, and in turn, he began to recognize her strength and quiet intelligence. Then, one evening, after a long day of work, a private conversation turned into something neither of them had planned. They were alone in the study, discussing a serious matter when a fleeting moment of emotion and vulnerability passed between them. Neither could resist the human need for closeness, and that evening changed everything. From that point, a secret connection formed, a bond they kept hidden from the outside world. It was a mixture of desire, care, and unspoken understanding, and it grew stronger with each passing day. But life has a way of introducing consequences when people are least prepared. Several weeks later, she discovered she was pregnant. The joy she felt at the news was quickly replaced by fear. She knew that this child would change everything, that it could not remain a secret forever. The excitement of carrying life was shadowed by the dread of how he would react. She feared rejection, scandal, and the harsh judgment of a man who valued reputation above all else. When she finally told him, the reaction was nothing like she had hoped. His face changed, a mixture of shock, anger, and fear crossing his features. He did not hug her or show understanding. Instead, he focused on what this would mean for his public image, his family, and his life of control. The words that came from his mouth were harsh and cold. He denied responsibility and made it clear that this child was not welcome in his life. He dismissed her from the house, insisting she'll leave immediately and make other arrangements. She left the mansion quietly, heartbroken and scared. She felt betrayed, abandoned by someone she had trusted and cared for deeply. The world outside seemed larger, colder, and more uncertain than the life she had known within those walls. But despite the pain, she carried a quiet resolve within her. She would give this child the life he deserved, even if it meant struggling and facing hardships alone. Her love for the child became a source of strength she had never known before. Life outside the mansion was not easy. She moved into a small apartment, found work that barely paid the bills, and faced judgment from people who whispered about her past. Every day was a test of endurance, and there were moments when she questioned whether she could continue. But the thought of her unborn child kept her moving forward, gave her purpose, and reminded her that she was not alone. She started preparing for the baby, imagining the life she wanted to provide, even if it was modest and far from the wealth she had left behind. Months passed and she gave birth to a boy. Holding him for the first time, she felt a love so deep and powerful it was almost overwhelming. She named him with care, choosing a name that carried hope, strength, and resilience. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, and every moment of struggle became worth it when she looked into his eyes. He was a part of her, a living reminder of courage and love. As the boy grew, she worked tirelessly to provide for him. She took jobs that were demanding and tiring, but she never let him feel the weight of her struggles. She found ways to give him joy, to teach him values, kindness, and integrity. He grew up understanding the importance of honesty, respect, and compassion, lessons his mother embodied every day. She shielded him from the bitterness she felt towards the man who had abandoned them, determined not to let resentment define his life. Despite the hardships, they shared laughter, small victories, and quiet moments that made life feel beautiful. The boy inherited his mother's resilience and intelligence, often surprising her with his insights and courage. He was curious about the world, eager to learn, and compassionate towards others. The bond between them grew stronger with every challenge they faced together, a testament to the power of love and perseverance. Even as the years passed, the shadow of his father's absence lingered in their lives. She spoke of him carefully, emphasizing the importance of truth and self-respect, but without encouraging hatred. The boy grew with a sense of identity and longing, a question in the back of his mind about the man who had left them behind. He wondered who he resembled, how his father lived, and what kind of person he might be. The curiosity was gentle at first, but it grew with time, becoming a silent thread connecting past and present. Through these years, she never gave up hope that one day the boy would find understanding and perhaps, someday, closure. She taught him to be strong, to face life with courage, and to never let the absence of one person define his value or his future. The story of their life together became one of quiet triumph, resilience, and the unwavering strength of a mother's love. The first part of their journey ended with the boy reaching an age where he began to question more deeply, to look beyond his immediate world, and to dream of discovering the truth about his origins. She watched him with pride and a twinge of apprehension, knowing that one day he might seek answers, confront the past, and perhaps meet the father who had once dismissed them. It was a mix of hope, fear, and anticipation. The quiet tension before the next chapter of their lives would unfold. Life outside the mansion was not easy, but it was filled with lessons that shaped both mother and son. She worked long hours in small jobs, often coming home exhausted, yet she always found time to spend with her child. She made sure he never felt the weight of their struggles more than he could bear. Meals were sometimes simple, clothes were often secondhand, and luxuries were rare. But love filled every corner of their small apartment. She wanted him to understand that wealth did not define a person. Character, kindness, and resilience did. As the boy grew, he showed signs of intelligence and curiosity. He asked questions about the world, about people, and eventually about the father he had never met. She answered as honestly as she could without bitterness, teaching him that some people make mistakes, some choose wrong paths, but it does not define the future of the child. She told him that knowing the truth was important, but more important was how he carried himself, how he treated others, and how he faced life's challenges with courage. School brought its own set of challenges. He was often teased about their modest lifestyle, about things he could not control. Yet he learned to stand tall, to respond with grace, and to let his actions speak louder than words. His mother's teachings were his shield and guide. She encouraged him to focus on his studies, to dream bigger than their surroundings, and to work hard for a future where he could be proud of himself. The small victories he achieved became the joy of their lives, a good grade, a small award, a moment of recognition. She made sure he never felt the absence of his father as shame or failure. Instead, she taught him to see it as a story of courage, of survival, and of learning to love despite abandonment. She shared with him stories of ordinary people who overcame difficulties, who built better lives with determination and hope. The boy absorbed these lessons, forming a worldview that was compassionate yet strong, understanding yet determined to succeed on his own terms. Despite the challenges, they found moments of happiness. Simple things like walking in the park, reading together in the evenings, or cooking a small meal became memories they cherished. Laughter was always present, sometimes tinged with the knowledge of their struggles, but still genuine and warm. She made sure he knew he was valued, loved, and capable of achieving anything despite the hardships that surrounded them. As the boy entered his teenage years, curiosity about his father grew. He noticed subtle similarities between himself and a man he had never met, a way of thinking, certain look in the mirror, moments when he displayed confidence or stubbornness. He asked more questions, not out of anger, but a natural desire to understand his own identity. She answered carefully, always mindful of his emotions, revealing the truth in stages so he could process it without feeling resentment or confusion. She wanted him to be prepared for a world that might not always be gentle. And for a father who had once been distant and absent, the boy developed hobbies and skills that reflected his determination. He was resourceful, creative, and empathetic. Friends and teachers noticed his kindness and intellect. He had inherited the quiet strength of his mother, combined with his own emerging personality traits. She encouraged him to explore his talents, support his passions, and use his energy to create positive outcomes. Every accomplishment was a reminder that even though they had started life with disadvantages, perseverance and love could build a meaningful existence. Challenges did not end, of course. Bills piled up, health concerns arose, and societal judgment occasionally weighed heavily on them. Yet through every obstacle, she modeled resilience and hope. She never let anger or bitterness consume her. Instead, she channeled energy into creating a safe and nurturing environment for her son. He learned that life could be tough, but one could meet challenges with courage, kindness, and intelligence. Through these years, they formed a strong bond, one that was rooted in trust, shared struggles, and unwavering support. The boy grew with a sense of security, even in the absence of a father. Yet the question of identity lingered, gentle but persistent, like a quiet current beneath the surface of everyday life. He wondered who his father was, what kind of man he might have become, and whether there could ever be a connection. The curiosity was never about revenge. It was about understanding, about finding pieces of himself that were missing. She watched him grow, her heart swelling with pride, but also with concern. She knew that one day he might want to seek answers, to confront the past, and to find the father he never knew. She prepared him not with fear or anger, but with lessons about human complexity, accountability, and forgiveness. She wanted him to approach the truth with strength, courage, and a compassionate heart, understanding that people make mistakes, and that life does not always follow the path one hopes for as the years passed. Small opportunities brought glimpses of a world beyond their immediate environment. They visited new neighborhoods, met new people, and experienced moments of joy and growth outside the limitations they had known. Every experience was a lesson, every challenge a test of their resilience. She encouraged him to dream bigger, to see possibilities rather than obstacles, and to hold on to hope, even when circumstances seemed bleak. Through it all, she remained a steady presence, a guiding light, and a source of unwavering love. The boy absorbed her lessons, forming a sense of identity that was independent, strong, and morally grounded. He learned to value relationships, to recognize integrity, and to understand that forgiveness and understanding were powerful tools in navigating life. By the time he reached his late teens, he had developed a maturity beyond his years. He understood hardship, responsibility, and the importance of character. Yet, the curiosity about his father had grown stronger, a quiet longing to connect the past with the present. He realized that understanding where he came from could help him shape who he wanted to become. He began to prepare mentally, imagining the day when he might meet the man who had once walked away from their lives. Through every step, the bond between mother and son remained unbreakable. Their life together had been shaped by struggle, resilience, and deep love. She had created a foundation that gave him the courage to face the world, confidence to ask questions, and the wisdom to seek answers responsibly. The story of their lives so far was one of endurance, growth, and preparation for a future that, while uncertain, was filled with possibility and hope. Part 2 of their journey ended with the boy on the verge of discovery, curiosity burning quietly in his heart. The mother knew the time would come when he might confront the past, and she prepared him with love, wisdom, a sense of self-worth, strong enough to face whatever truths lay ahead. The foundation they had built together was solid, and the next chapter promised a confrontation, revelations, and the potential for healing that could only come from courage, honesty, and the enduring bond of family. As the boy entered his late teens, life began to introduce unexpected moments that challenged the routine he had known all his life. He had grown confident in his identity, shaped by his mother's love and wisdom. But there remained a quiet curiosity about the father he had never met. He wondered about the man's personality, his appearance, and how much of himself he might see in this stranger. The questions were not born of anger, but from a natural desire to understand who he truly was. One day, an opportunity unexpectedly presented itself. He attended a public event in the city, a cultural exhibition that drew a large crowd. It was not a coincidence that the wealthy man happened to be present as well, attending in his capacity as a businessman supporting the event. The boy noticed him from a distance, a familiar presence that sparked an immediate and strange sense of recognition. There was something in the way the man carried himself, the way he moved and observed, that seemed oddly familiar. For a moment, the boy's heart raced with a mix of excitement and fear. He watched the man carefully, studying his mannerisms, and for the first time, he began to imagine what it would feel like to confront him. Despite the strong resemblance and internal curiosity, he did not rush forward. Instead, he stayed in the background, observing the interactions of the man with others, noting his expressions, and quietly assessing the personality he had only known from stories and fleeting descriptions from his mother. There was a strange mix of nervous anticipation and careful planning, a desire to understand before acting, in the days that followed. The boy found himself thinking more about the man. Memories of childhood questions and the stories his mother had told mingled with newfound determination. He decided to approach the situation cautiously. He wanted to know the truth, not just about appearances, but about the character and integrity of the man who had once dismissed him and his mother. The thought of confrontation brought both anxiety and resolve, a tension that pushed him to prepare mentally for the meeting that could change everything. Meanwhile, the mother noticed her son's growing curiosity and tension. She recognized the signs from her own experience, the longing to connect, the questions that demanded answers, and the courage that was quietly building within him. She approached the situation carefully, guiding him with advice, reminding him to stay calm and respectful, and to approach the truth with courage and maturity. She wanted him to understand that meeting his father was not just about discovering the past, but about shaping the future. Learning who he was, and maintaining his integrity in the process. The day finally arrived when the boy and the man were in the same space. The boy's heart pounded as he took a deep breath and approached cautiously. The man noticed a presence behind him, a sense of familiarity that made him pause for a moment. As their eyes met, the man experienced a flicker of shock, though he tried to mask it with composure. There was a subtle recognition, something he could not immediately place, and it stirred a mixture of confusion, curiosity, and unease. The boy spoke carefully, choosing his words with precision. He revealed his identity gradually, watching the man's reactions with intense attention. Initially, the man reacted with disbelief, denying the connection or seeking to maintain distance. But as details emerged, shared traits, stories from the past, and truths that could not be ignored, he began to see the reality of the situation. The confrontation was tense, filled with emotion, uncertainty, and a mixture of anger, guilt, and curiosity. The boy expressed his feelings honestly without rage or vengeance. He spoke of curiosity, longing, and the need to understand his origins. He described the impact of absence, the questions that had shaped his identity, and the desire to meet the man who had once walked away. His voice carried both strength and vulnerability, reflecting the years of preparation and the careful balance of emotion that his mother had instilled in him. The man listened, experiencing a range of emotions. Shock gave way to guilt, which then mixed with regret and a growing awareness of the consequences of past actions. He remembered the day he had dismissed the maid, the harsh words he had spoken, and the life he had unknowingly abandoned. The realization of what he had missed, the years, the experiences, and the growth of a child who was partly his own, brought a deep and uncomfortable truth to the forefront of his mind. As the conversation continued, the boy noticed subtle changes in the man's demeanor. The initial defensiveness softened, replaced by reflection and tentative acknowledgement. It was not instant forgiveness, nor was it complete acceptance, but it was a beginning. A bridge was forming, built from honesty, courage, and a shared human need to understand and connect. The boy felt a cautious optimism, sensing that this moment could lead to something transformative. Even if the road ahead remained uncertain, throughout this encounter, the mother watched from a distance, a silent guardian who had guided her son to this point. She observed the subtle shifts in emotion, the tentative steps toward understanding, the courage that her son displayed. Her heart was filled with both pride and apprehension. She knew that healing would take time, that emotions were complex, and that this first meeting was just the beginning of a long journey toward reconciliation and understanding. In the following days, the boy reflected on the encounter, replaying moments in his mind, analyzing gestures, and assessing the words spoken. He felt a mix of satisfaction and apprehension. Satisfaction for having faced the truth, apprehension for the unknown path that lay ahead. He understood that relationships could not be forced, that trust had to be earned, and that human emotions were layered with complexity. This realization brought both maturity and a sense of readiness for whatever might come next. Meanwhile, the man could not stop thinking about the boy, about the life he had missed, and about the lessons he had failed to teach. He reflected on his own past decisions, on the choices that had led to absence and regret. Slowly, he began to consider the possibility of change, of making amends, and of understanding a life that had unfolded without him. The awareness of his mistakes was uncomfortable, yet it opened the door to potential redemption. If approached with sincerity and humility, the boy's growing self-awareness and curiosity became a guiding force in their tentative relationship. He began to realize that understanding one's past was not just about confronting pain, but also about embracing growth, learning lessons, and forging a path toward emotional maturity. He appreciated the complexity of human relationships, the imperfections of people, and the importance of approaching challenges with empathy and honesty. This period of cautious observation and reflection marked a critical turning point in their lives. The boy's approach to his father was thoughtful, measured, and grounded in the values his mother had instilled. The man's gradual acceptance, combined with a growing recognition of responsibility, created a foundation for the next stage of their relationship. It was a delicate balance of curiosity, accountability, and emotional exploration that required patience and understanding. Through these experiences, the boy developed a deeper understanding of human nature. He saw the interplay of actions and consequences, the complexities of choice, and the potential for redemption. He learned that confrontation, when handled with wisdom and empathy, could lead to growth and connection rather than conflict and resentment. These lessons became essential to his identity, shaping his approach to life, relationships, and his emerging sense of self. Part 3 concluded with a sense of anticipation and cautious optimism. The boy had taken the first steps in uncovering the truth about his father, navigating the encounter with courage and intelligence. The man, faced with the reality of his past decisions, began to recognize the impact of absence and the opportunity to rebuild a relationship. Their journey was far from over, but a bridge had been formed, a bridge built on honesty, reflection, and the enduring hope for understanding and reconciliation. The next chapters promised growth, emotional exploration, and the possibility of healing that could only come from patience, courage, and a willingness to face the truth. The day came when the boy decided it was time to reveal the truth fully to the man he had been observing for so long. He had prepared himself mentally, reflecting on his feelings, rehearsing words in his mind, and considering every possible reaction. He understood that this encounter could be emotional, tense, and perhaps even painful. He also knew that facing the truth was essential for his own growth and for understanding a part of himself that's been missing for years. He found the man in a quiet office. Alone for a brief moment and approached with cautious confidence, the man looked up, startled by the unexpected presence, and a flicker of recognition passed through his eyes. The boy spoke steadily, choosing his words carefully, revealing his identity as the son he had abandoned 15 years ago. He described the years of absence, the curiosity and longing he had felt, and the desire to understand the man who had once walked away. The initial reaction was a mix of shock, disbelief, and denial. The man's mind raced, recalling events from the past that he had tried to forget. He remembered the day he had dismissed the maid, the harsh words he had spoken, and the life he had left behind. The sudden confrontation forced him to face the consequences of his choices, something he had avoided for years. He struggled to process the presence of a young man who shared his features, mannerisms, and a quiet strength that was unmistakably familiar. The boy continued to speak, sharing his emotions honestly and calmly. He explained the curiosity that had grown over the years, the questions he had asked his mother, and the lessons she had taught him about resilience, forgiveness, and understanding. His voice carried a mix of strength and vulnerability, demonstrating that he had prepared for this moment, not out of anger, but out of a need to uncover the truth. He wanted connection, not confrontation. And he wanted to understand the man behind the decisions that had shaped his life. The man listened, feeling a wave of emotions he had not anticipated. Guilt was the strongest, washing over him in waves as he realized the depth of his absence and the impact it had on the boy's life. Shock and disbelief gave way to introspection, and he began to understand that the boy's presence was a reflection of both his past mistakes and the resilience of those he had abandoned. The reality of his actions, the life that had unfolded without him, and the strength of the child he had never known became overwhelming. As the conversation progressed, the boy asked questions, seeking understanding about the man's life, his choices, and his feelings about the past. The man responded hesitantly at first, struggling with words and emotions, but gradually opened up. He spoke of regret, of missed opportunities, and of the lessons he had learned too late. He expressed a desire to understand the life that the boy had led, the challenges he had faced, and the person he had become. This dialogue marked a turning point, as both began to see the humanity in each other, and the potential for a connection that had once seemed impossible. The boy noticed the subtle changes in the man's demeanor. The initial defensiveness softened, replaced by reflection and tentative acknowledgement. It was not immediate forgiveness, nor complete acceptance, but it was a beginning. The boy felt cautious optimism, sensing that this moment could be the foundation for a new relationship built on honesty, accountability, and mutual respect. The conversation was intense, emotional, and filled with the complexity of human relationships. But it was also a step toward healing. Throughout this encounter, memories of the past surfaced. The man recalled moments of pride and moments of failure, the decisions he had made, and the consequences he had ignored. The boy shared experiences from his life highlighting resilience, growth, and the lessons he had learned. The mother's teachings were evident in his words, demonstrating maturity, empathy, and a deep understanding of human nature. The exchange was powerful, creating a space where truth could be spoken without judgment, and where emotions could be expressed freely. The man began to express remorse, acknowledging the pain he had caused and the years he had missed. He spoke of his own fears, his concern for reputation, and the mistakes he had made in handling the situation. His voice revealed vulnerability, a side of him that few had seen. The boy listened carefully, understanding that forgiveness would not be immediate, but that recognition and accountability were essential first steps. The dialogue allowed both to confront the past, explore emotions, and begin the process of understanding and connection as they continued to talk. The boy asked about the father's perspective, seeking insight into his decisions and feelings. The man shared personal struggles, societal pressures, and the challenges of balancing life, career, and family expectations. He admitted his shortcomings, his failure to act with compassion, and the lessons he had learned too late. The conversation was not about blame, but about acknowledgement, responsibility, and the possibility of building something meaningful moving forward. The boy responded with empathy, demonstrating the maturity and emotional intelligence he had developed over the years. He acknowledged the man's struggles, expressed understanding of human imperfection, and conveyed a willingness to see beyond the mistakes. His approach was calm, respectful, and guided by the desire to create a space for dialogue and potential reconciliation. The exchange highlighted the power of communication, honesty, and emotional resilience in navigating complex relationships. Throughout this encounter, both experienced moments of tension, reflection, and emotional release. Tears were shed, words were weighed carefully, and silences held significant meaning. The process of confrontation became a catalyst for personal growth. As both the boy and the man confronted truths about themselves and each other, they began to recognize the potential for healing connection, an understanding that could only emerge from honesty and courage. The mother, observing from a distance, felt a mixture of pride, relief, and apprehension. She had prepared her son for this moment, guided him with wisdom, and instilled values of courage and empathy. Seeing the boy navigate the encounter with maturity and grace filled her with hope for the future. She also understood that healing was a gradual process, requiring patience, consistent effort, and emotional resilience from all involved. As the conversation drew to a close, both the boy and the man reflected on what had been shared. The boy recognized the man's genuine remorse and the potential for a relationship, while the man began to comprehend the significance of his actions and the opportunity to make amends. The encounter had opened a door, created a bridge, and planted the seeds for a connection that could grow over time with honesty, understanding, and mutual respect. Part 4 ended with a sense of cautious hope. The boy had faced the truth, expressed his feelings, and observed the man's response. The man had confronted his past, acknowledged mistakes, and demonstrated a willingness to explore a relationship with the son he had once abandoned. The foundation for healing and reconciliation was established, marking the beginning of a new chapter that promised growth, understanding, and the potential for meaningful connection. After the first emotional confrontation, both the boy and the man began a delicate process of rebuilding their connection. It was not immediate trust or instant forgiveness, but a tentative start that required patience, honesty, and courage from both sides. The boy felt a mixture of hope and caution, knowing that the past could not be erased, but believing that understanding and growth were possible. The man, confronted with the reality of lost years, began to recognize the depth of his mistakes and the opportunity to make amends. They started with small interactions. The boy asked questions about the father's life, his experiences, and the challenges he had faced. The man answered carefully, sharing moments of regret and lessons learned, sometimes struggling to find the right words, but gradually opening up. These conversations were not about blame, but about understanding, building a foundation for a relationship that had been denied for too long. Each exchange allowed both to see the humanity in each other and to appreciate the complexity of life and choices. The boy also shared his own life experiences. From childhood struggles to teenage achievements, he spoke of his mother's unwavering support, the lessons she had taught him, and the resilience he had developed. The man listened, realizing the strength and character that had grown in the boy despite the absence he had caused. There was a sense of admiration mixed with guilt, as he recognized the qualities he had contributed to without being present, and the life that had unfolded in his absence. Over time, they began to spend more time together, cautiously at first, then with increasing comfort. They shared meals, discussed everyday life, and even worked on small projects together. The father began to see not just the son he had lost, but a young man with values, intelligence, and compassion. The boy, in turn, began to understand the human complexities of his father. Realizing that people can change and that past mistakes do not define the entirety of a person, these moments helped to build trust and open the door to a genuine relationship. The mother observed these developments with a mix of relief and caution. She had nurtured her son's understanding of empathy, resilience, and forgiveness, and she now saw these lessons manifesting in his interactions. She also recognized that the father was making sincere efforts, learning to navigate a relationship he had missed for years. The process required patience, careful communication, and emotional intelligence. And both the boy and the man were demonstrating growth in ways that promised a healthier future. Challenges still arose, as the past could not be fully forgotten. Moments of tension occurred when old wounds surfaced, misunderstandings happened, or the weight of lost years pressed upon them. However, these moments were navigated with communication and understanding. The boy used the skills and emotional maturity he had developed over the years, while the man learned to take responsibility for his actions and respond with honesty rather than defensiveness. Through these challenges, the relationship strengthened, becoming more authentic and grounded in mutual respect. As the months passed, the bond between father and son grew. They shared experiences, learned from each other, and began to form memories that replaced some of the pain of lost time. The father attended significant events in the boy's life, celebrated achievements, and offered guidance. The boy, in turn, shared parts of his world, his friends, and his interests, allowing the father to integrate into a life that had flourished without him. This gradual integration required effort, patience, and emotional resilience, but it also brought joy, healing, and hope. The father also worked on repairing his relationship with the mother. Understanding the sacrifices she had made and the life she had built in his absence, he expressed gratitude, respect, and recognition for her strength. Realizing that her guidance had shaped the remarkable young man he was now meeting, their interactions became more cooperative, supportive, and respectful, forming a foundation for a family dynamic that had been absent for years. This process allowed all three to navigate the complexities of human relationships, learning to communicate, forgive, and grow together. Throughout this journey, the boy developed a deeper understanding of human nature, empathy, and resilience. He saw how people can change, how mistakes can be acknowledged and corrected, and how relationships can be rebuilt with effort and sincerity. He also recognized that forgiveness does not mean forgetting, but involves understanding, acceptance, and the ability to move forward with a sense of purpose and maturity. These lessons became integral to his identity, guiding his future interactions and shaping his character. The father, too, experienced profound growth. He learned humility, accountability, and the importance of presence and consistency in relationships. He realized that wealth and status cannot replace genuine connection, that love and attention are earned through care and commitment. The experience transformed his perspective, making him more compassionate, reflective, and determined to be a meaningful part of his son's life. The journey of reconciliation was as much about personal growth as it was about rebuilding a family bond. In time, the family began to create new traditions, celebrate milestones together, and support each other in ways that had been missing for years. The boy's achievements were celebrated, the mother's efforts were acknowledged, and the father learned to participate actively in their lives. Each small step strengthened their bond, creating a sense of belonging, security, and mutual respect. The story of absence and abandonment evolved into a narrative of healing, growth, and connection. The process was not without setbacks, but the resilience and emotional intelligence developed over years allowed them to navigate difficulties with grace. They learned to communicate openly, express emotions honestly, and address challenges collaboratively. These skills, cultivated through past experiences, became the pillars of a family relationship that was now rooted in trust, understanding, and shared commitment. The journey from separation to connection was a testament to human adaptability, the power of love, and the capacity for forgiveness. By the end of this journey, the father, son, and mother had established a relationship that, while shaped by past difficulties, was filled with potential and hope. The boy had faced the truth, expressed his feelings, and observed the sincerity of his father. The father had confronted his past mistakes, acknowledged the pain he had caused, and demonstrated a commitment to change. The mother had guided both with wisdom, love, and patience, ensuring that the foundation for a meaningful relationship was solid. Part 5 concluded with a sense of closure. growth, and optimism. The boy had reclaimed a part of his identity. The father had begun a path of redemption, and the family had started to build connections that would last into the future. The story, once filled with absence and unanswered questions, had transformed into a tale of reconciliation, understanding, and the enduring power of human love and resilience. Their lives, though marked by past mistakes, now held the promise of healing, growth, and a future shaped by compassion, accountability, and shared experiences.